Is that better? Can you hear me now? Yep. Okay. At least I'm getting something at least according to my monitor. Can people hear me? Okay. So do I sound in my normal range, or do I sound like a teenage boy? That's the next question. Okay. Good. Uh, OBS, the software that I'm actually using, updated in the 6 months. Oh, good. And at least it's normal. And because they updated, there's a number of things that changed. And I've been for the past half hour, I've been frantically trying to move it together. For example, for the live chat frame, I had to do something a little bit there. So you've got no sound, hobby man, or are we are we okay? So again, it's been okay. Good. All right. Because unfortunately, when I hooked this up, I made sure that the mic was actually working, but I didn't actually double check to make sure that the software itself was actually was working with that. So okay, great. Hi everybody. So I'm just kind of checking in to see how everything is. We may as well do a little bit of check-in since this is a weathering channel. How's the weather where you are? And it is minus 24 Celsius outside right now. And this week it could actually slide on down.
It will.
Apparently, it's to slide down to a minus 40. By the way, you probably heard a little voice in there that. There's my daughter. Alas, she left her trombone in the trunk of my wife's car, and my wife's car is currently about. If you're doing it in miles, it's probably about 80 miles north of us right now. So the oh. And Bill, you're 65 Fahrenheit. I envy you greatly. Okay, that's actually more or less the temperature inside in the house right now. So, yeah, no trombones today, but if we can find a whistle. And my son is upstairs playing our new Nintendo Switch, so you will hear him say stuff probably in the background. I hope that's okay because he can be very loud. But we're gonna try and go with this. So and we'll kind of do that and kind of take questions. So you're asking me a thought on a scale train product. I have one. I have I think it's an ET44AC, and that actually sort of leads me to one of the things that I'm going to be at least talking about is I have a new control system for my for my layout. The system that I had been using before was really long in the tooth. It's about 15 years old. Needed replacing. So this is what I'm working on now, and it's a Pico smart control. And I'll talk about it in a sec. But it works really, really well with anything with a lock sound decoder. Quite nice and works that way. So anyway, I'll talk about that in a second. Yeah, well, he got Super Mario Maker 2, and we can't get him off of it, and he's 5. So anyway, but we'll go from there. For those of you who've never seen me do a live stream, it is often chaotic. It just kind of comes and goes. We do have a general topic that we're going to be talking about, but I try and keep up with the live chat as much as possible. I do have some pictures to share. Because this is an updated version of OBS, some of the stuff that I had set up on the previous version isn't quite compatible. So there are going to be technical glitches today, I can guarantee you. So my apologies in advance. But we may as well get started. I mean, I do have a little an intro sequence that I'm just gonna have us go through, and then we'll get started. There we go. I'm just gonna bring it back to that. Oh, so by the way, one of the things that my daughter is doing just off screen here, she's paying more attention to the chats than I am, so she's going to point out some things. Yeah, so I mean, the primary focus for today is weathering track. And I know, Kevin G, you asked a question in terms of a layout update. Truth is, my next loop to layout video has been mostly filmed, like the narrative's been filmed. I just actually have to run an ops session, which I'm hoping to film tonight, and then I'm going to get editing in that sequence that shows the next stage of the evolution of the layout, and that will actually involve some degree of doing some operations and adding some new track in. It's not the final track plan, but it does add to it, and so that works well. Yes. Sorry. This is Pico Smart Control. Actually, you can see it up top. But if you look carefully, this is identical to the ESU cab control because it is identical. It's just a different label on the top of it. Different software, but it's the same hardware, and so it's an ESU system. So here's a question let's kind of get before I start kind of pulling some of my stuff out. Weathering track. With weathering track, I want to get a sense of where people are at, because I mean the weathering track that I have done. Keep in mind is I have a module that I'm going to be showing some pictures of how I've done that, but I can guarantee you there's about at least according to my information, there's about 22 people watching right now, and I can almost guarantee you that we have at least 25 different ways to weather track. Would I be correct on that assessment? So again, welcome to that. Oh, by the way, there's Pico, as in PECO, who makes track like this, and then there's Pico, PIKO, which makes the controller system like that. Two different companies. Sorry, I should have actually said that, because most of the time when you think Pico, at least from a North American perspective, you're talking this stuff. So Matt, you airbrush. So Matt, you've put down that you airbrush with dollar store acrylic. Is there a particular color that you like to use? Let's see, where else do we have? CDP 1965. Hi, Trainiac. Good to see you. What I'm just doing now is as you're coming in. What sorts of things that you're using to actually weather your track? And Matt Armstrong was saying burnt umber thinned way down. I'm just gonna flip this over to a picture of weathered track before ballasting that I did on the module for my club. I'm just going to switch this over, but I've done a few more things here, and the color that I used when I did this was Tamiya NATO brown. So that's what I did with it with that one. So camo brown. So I've seen people use airbrush, airbrush painting. How many of you have actually hand painted your track? Because the thing is, when we're talking about weathering track, we're actually talking about both painting and weathering, because when it comes basically, just like this, it is plastic and metal, and it hasn't been painted at all. And then, of course, one of the other challenges is when you're using the stuff that I'm using, this Kato Unitrack, is how do you actually weather that without it making it look like it sucks? So that becomes part of it. So Eric, thank you. By the way, thank you for moderating. Yes, the Blue Wrenches, both Joe G and Eric Hall are both here. Eric and Joe, are you watching a football game at the same time? I realize I'm competing with the NFL, but I'm Canadian. CFL's kind of come and gone. So Willie, good to see you. Willie Bruce here is actually a member of the club that I'm a part of, and the module that you saw the picture of is from the club that Willie and I are. That I'm a part of Willie's club. So. Because one of the things when I say hand painting, I know that we've reached. I don't have the pictures to share here, but one of the modules that we've worked on at a club, Willie hand painted something like, I don't know. I think it works out to maybe 25 feet of track that he painted by hand. So that's one of the things that we've that we've been working on, and some of it has to do with you can airbrush, but sometimes you don't want the particulates from an airbrush in, if you're working in a space that doesn't that you're in like a living room or something like that. So some of that is part of how you do it. Yeah, I mean, hand painting really does take a lot. I mean, quite often, the stuff that I've done, sometimes like sometimes I do airbrushing, and then a little while ago, Ron Marsh did a showing how he painted track in his yard. And I think he did a general airbrush color, but then he came back and painted individual ties different color, and that's really the first step to doing something that kind of, when you're weathering track, the idea again is to make it look real, and to give the sense of size. And when you're weathering track, there's sort of a two stage really. It's a three-stage process. There's, once you get the track down and you do the initial kind of painting of the track, and then you ballast it, and then once you finish ballasting it, then you can come back and do further weathering with the ballast in place. And as I said, there's a lot of different methods. So part of this thing is really getting people together for the chat to share some of your own stuff there as well. And Matt, yeah, like one of the comments that you've put down there is about airbrushing up the middle of the ballast to do oil stains or dust. And I mean, I've seen weathering powders. One of the books that I reviewed not too long ago was the model weathering model railways book from Ammo by MiG, and the very, very last chapter in that particular book shows weathering like painting and weathering track, and actually done by Mig Jimenez himself. And so that, like, if weathering track, you're wanting to know how to professional works on it, that's definitely one to check out. So, and actually, Eric, your comment in terms of how when something is sloppy. The fortunate thing is, once you ballast it, the ballast actually covers a multitude of sins. But there's one other thing that I actually like to do before I do ballasting. And just coming back to this picture here, if you look really, really carefully, you can actually see the grain of wood on the track itself. And that's sort of a second stage that I actually like. One of the things that I like to do to kind of make some of that detail pop is to use a dry brushing technique. And so the one of the things when doing this with the using a dry brushing technique, especially you can see more or less in the center of this particular picture, is where just and with dry brushing, this one I did with acrylics. That all you do is you just take a lighter tone. This was kind of, I think it was a cream color of some description, and just putting a bit of paint on the brush that you're going to use, and an old brush. Don't use a new brush for doing dry brushing, and wipe it off on a piece of paper towel, and then just lightly go back and forth over the tracks, and it just leaves the pigment on the very tops. I mean, it's a fairly standard modeling technique. But it does add a lot of variance to the track. But the other thing is when doing this, especially if you do like tracks of different color, by doing this, it also kind of almost kind of unifies it. Even if the tile or the different ties are different colors, this kind of unifies it together. So. Now, Matt, you actually posed a very good question. Do I find oils better for dry brushing? The answer is actually yes, but it's something I learned after I did the picture that you see here. So one of the things that I find working with oils is that you can apply it, and one thing that dry brushing can happen is if it can get quite grainy, and so with the oil paints, on the other hand, if you do the dry brushing, you can then come back with a completely dry brush, and then smooth it out, and it actually looks much better. The Southern Pacific locomotive I did a little while ago has that. So yes, I have tried oils. It's a more recent thing that I've tried. I really like how it works, because you have the ability to further blend it once the dry brush is done. And so, how many of you can hear my son and his various exclamations in the background? I hope he's not too noisy. Last year, I actually downloaded an app to my phone that actually actually measures the volume output, the decibel level, and my son actually hit 100 decibels. So he is capable of being as loud as a buzzsaw. Okay, well, anyway, he's in the background there. So yes, one of the ways to actually do some weathering of track is, yes, using the oils and bringing that forward to the tracks. In this case, probably this is the one place where when using oils, you could potentially use a little bit more. I mean, oil paint goes a long way. Like the tubes of oil paints that I have not replaced. And these tubes of oil paints some of them are 12, 13 years old, and I'm still using them. So they're, oh yeah, So Brent, good to see you. Yes, there's the trombone in the background, but the trombone's in Lacombe, so it won't be here today. So Michael, you're talking about using the Rust-Oleum camo, earth, or brown to paint track. Yes, I think that can work. One of the things you have to be really careful, though, especially when working with that, is how many of you have actually tried spray painting something that is on pink styrofoam? Because the propellant from the cans will actually eat away at the foam, whether it's the white styrofoam or the pink styrofoam, and so yes, you can use the spray cans, but you got to be really careful. I mean, if you've got it down on cork and wood, then no problem at all. But if it's on pink styrofoam, you really have to make sure that you're protecting. You've got something else to really protect that before you do that. So if you're on plywood and cork, yes, it'll work well. The main thing is that one of the real challenges, and maybe I should have brought this up from before, one of the main challenges that I'm finding when weathering track is the conundrum of wanting to make it look realistic, and yet if you put enough paint on it, all of a sudden your conductivity just goes out the window. So you're in this constant cycle of making sure that it looks realistic, but there's still enough bare metal for the wheels to make contact with. I mean, for those of you who are lucky enough to do like battery powered locomotives, you don't have to worry about that at all, from what I understand. But you can, but at the same time, like, you know, the one thing is if you're putting paint down, you almost immediately have to clean off the railheads right away, and you have to be really, really careful around turnouts. So part of it is that. Yeah, Matt, like you, the sanding the tops of it. When I did this particular track, I initially I think I sanded it, but I know that I was actually, I used a bit of I think 91% alcohol to pull some of that off. Actually, you can here's a couple of better shots. This is still kind of in progress of how it ended up after ballasting, and I'll get to this in a moment. But you might notice that there's two different colors of ballast on here. The truth is, that's only one color of ballast. I only used one color of ballast, but then I used an ink wash to color the ballast on the additional track. So I'm just gonna. Oh, okay. I didn't necessarily get all of the pictures that I wanted. So. Yeah, I actually, it's Matt, in terms of this particular picture, this picture has been since ballasted and cleaned further, because it was folks in the club who took a closer look at that and said, "Oh, John, that track's really dirty," and they went to it. Right, Willie? I know that. I know that once we got this module up and running, it had to pass the electrical tests, and one of the things that we had to do was go further, go and clean it a little bit further. And yes, painting the points of the turnout, because if conductivity is one of the things that you're working on, then yes, that's the case. Particularly, this is a Kato number 6. And you definitely want to make sure that we're like right here where the points make contact over here. You want to make sure that doesn't have any paint on it. If you do happen to get paint on there, just clean it off, but make sure that there's you've got clean contacts. I mean, I'm a weathering guy. I'm not an electrical guy, so that's something that I have to be really careful on. And I realized that I didn't. I need to show this on a frame where I can actually do this much better. But you have the points here, and you got to make sure that they're cleaned. They're cleaned right off. So, believe it or not, Matt, I actually do ballast near points, but boy, am I really careful about it. And I go back and I try and make sure that it's absolutely clear, and I'm clearing it every time. But yes, there is a certain safety of not ballasting near the points, because you don't want that to get gummed up at all. And so that's one thing that you have to be. Joe, you make a very good point that real railroads don't put a lot of ballast in and around the points as well. So yeah, I think that's something to be careful of. Now, here's a question. I said this is for all kinds of track, and as you've seen from the videos, my personal layout downstairs, because I'm not as strong with wiring and track laying and the like. I a number of years ago started collecting Kato Unitrack, and that's what I'm going to be using. My goal for that layout is to take this stuff which does admittedly look very toy-like, and to make it look as realistic as possible. Now, this is, because it's N scale. This is code. This is code 80 rail, so it's too thick. And I mean, really, unless you're using code 55 in N scale or smaller, you are dealing with a certain amount of you almost have to use certain tricks of the light to create it. So how I'm going to do this is a little bit different, because this is one thing that if you spray this, all of a sudden you lose. It's all one color, and you lose your tracks. So, and am I going to hand paint it? I may have to, but one of the things that I am going to do is that in the same way that you use Tester's dull coat to take off of the shine, the Tester's dull coat can also work like a clear primer. And the idea is that whether it's Tester's dull coat or just a matte coat, spraying this down will take the plastic shine off of it first off, and then it'll give it enough tooth that I can actually come back with probably what I'm going to be using is the Stynylrez brown, red brown primer, and I'm actually going to airbrush it, because what I'm going to do is just along here is I'm going to run some tape along both sides and then up the middle. So I'm just spraying the rails and to get the color, and then because I would have put down the Testers or the matte coat. I can then go back and actually paint some of the individual ties, and then I'm going to actually do ballast to match this, and that'll be one of the tests the tests on this. But the goal is to make this look as realistic as any other track, whether it's weathering and painting this stuff, whether or not you're using for HO scale. Yes, I do have a little bit of HO scale track. Someone gave it to me for some of the stuff that I'm working on. If I need something to display a car on, I'm going to create a very, very small diorama with this piece of track. So I'll be doing some track weathering as far as that. So. Yeah, and part of this is, as much as this is, we're talking about track weathering, a lot of this I haven't done yet, and so I mean, yes, I've got a lot of weathering and modeling experience. I know what some stuff that works. Years ago, before I got an airbrush, I actually did a piece of Kato Unitrack beside the cement grain elevator kit from Walthers, which is downstairs, and good day, Sparky, welcome aboard. And didn't get I haven't had a chance to I didn't bring it, and we have people from Holland. One of the reasons why I put this sort of mid-afternoon my local time is to see how wide of an audience that we could get, and I'm glad we have some people from Europe coming in. So yes, Dave, you are absolutely right that Kato does sell tiny little bags of ballast, but those tiny little bags of ballast, it really does add up. And what I'm going to try and do is try and match it with whether it's some woodland scenics, or whether it's one of the other companies that puts out some ballast, of trying to get a good blend that comes close to matching it. Well, we have half an hour in. We have a whole bunch of we have some more people checking in. So, well, I guess welcome. And so, Mike, just checking your chat out. Okay, so you've been using the micro engineering. Now, actually, that brings me to another point that I wanted to make to check in with, and
I couldn't find the train whistle.
Okay.
But I found this.
So my daughter couldn't find the train whistle. Now, so far, I haven't got a super chat at this point in time, but she is going to be the train whistle in case that actually does happen. Anyway, there we go. There's our first little bit of chaos for it. But one of the things here's actually a good question, since we actually have a fairly wide audience here. One of the things that I have noticed looking at different track and the amount of track that is actually, yes, the first one was free. If you want to hear it again, and she can play all kinds of things, but no, not until I see a super chat. So, and there we go. Because she can break my eardrums with that. So anyway. So that having been said, in your neck of the woods, in the area in which you are present, what is the color of the rails? Because I noticed here some of it here, depending upon how much it gets used, sometimes it's kind of a rust brown. But for example, at Heritage Park here in town, which is just it is a loop of track on which they have a pair of steam locomotives that run on it every day during the summer. It's almost black, and wondering, and because of that, depending the amount that we weather a track and how we weather it is also dependent upon how much it gets used. Like a main line is probably like a mainline track that has trains running it on the time. Like, yes, Eric, like dark brown to almost black with shiny tops in terms of the actual of something that's working. And whereas if you're on, say, Vancouver Island, for example, where you actually have rail but no trains on them anymore, it's all rusted out. So, yeah, Rusty Brown and Cape Breton. Now Highland Husky Mooch Squad. Are you north towards Sydney, or are you down near Port Hawkesbury? Because of course anything north of Port Hawkesbury, there hasn't been a train on that for years. I know that. I used to spend my summers on Cape Breton Island, so. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing the Cape Breton Central Nova Scotia Railway as part of what I'm doing. But anyway, that I digress. So the one of the things that I'm kind of hoping to do is the okay. So you're in Orangedale. All right, I'm just trying to remember. Yeah. My daughter is asking for a pencil, which I cannot find. Sorry. Okay, yeah. I mean, the fortunate thing about having a track that is actually that on the shiny tops is that since you're looking for electrical conductivity, that actually does look kind of realistic anyway. So that which is good. So okay. Oh, all right. You're near the train station museum on Cape Breton. So. And so one of the things to pay attention to is like what color are, say, the yard tracks. Actually, here's a question. And when it comes to weathering track, how many of you put grass on your track? Because for my layout, one of the things that will be on my track on my yard track is I'm going to try and actually get some little bits of grass tufts in there. And so, and a little note from my, all right. Yeah. Now, there's a couple of ways that I think you can do that. I mean, sprinkling little bits of flock can be one way to do it. Another way to do it is to do static grass, but I think probably what I will do is I will actually create static grass tufts, the separate from the layout, and then manually glue down the ones that I want. I'm thinking that's probably how I'm going to do it. The I My daughter's feeding me questions to ask question or feeding questions to you. Okay, so Mike, you've put down some ground foam. How many of you have put weathering powders? How many of you have actually used weathering powders or say pastels to actually weather between your tracks? So that's another, that is certainly another method to do that. You kind of have to be careful with that because of course if there's no real adhesion to that can get up on your rails. So the so. Mhm. Okay, Mike. Yeah, just send me a picture on Messenger. Although I seem to have set my actual phone down some. Megan, can you see if you can find my phone? No, that's not it. It's over there somewhere. So, yes, you could probably dull coat the powders down later. Although one of the things that I'm more inclined to use is if you can get a hold of it, pigment fixer actually fixes pigment and it doesn't dissolve it in the same way that dull coat does. So that's one thing to kind of keep in mind. So the good evening, New Fenris Railroad. Welcome. I have a sinking suspicion that I probably have left my phone in the car, where it's minus 24 degrees Celsius. So, okay. Yeah, I mean, hairspray can be used as a fixative. I haven't used it because for whatever reason, the hairsprays that we have that are in our house tend to be a little sticky even after drying, and I'm not sure quite why. And the reason I'm looking that way is that's where Megan is. Shane's Trains, welcome. Yeah, we're 40 minutes in and we're still having people arrive. So part of this, for those of you who have just been joining us, the one of the things that I wanted really as much information sharing in terms of we are when it comes to weathering track, there's the process of weathering track before you put down ballast, and then the process of weathering track after. We've kind of gone a little bit into the after, but the other thing is the note that my daughter put down. She wants me to ask this. Is just there. I will be doing videos on this, and I think one of the things. Now I do actually have to get more of my layout done. I've got things like backdrops and the like. But what are some? Just kind of throw this out there and just kind of let talk about it before I kind of come back to doing track. What are some topics? If you drop it in chat there, I'll try and go back through when we do this, and we can I can pick up some topics that you may want to have a look at. And then we can go from there. So. How many of you out there have been using the Kato Unitrack? So, Mike, your message just came in. I'll have a look at those photos and then just send a reply back to you once we're all done here. And so the yeah, and so Dave BNSM N scale. One of the things that I am looking to do is to try and do this as realistic as possible. Now, that having been said, there are people out there who have done Unitrack and made it look really, really good. So let's just say I'm not the pioneer here. People have already done this. But what I'm hoping to do is to just kind of share my experience with this as to what works and what doesn't. As a matter of fact, Megan, can you go find? There's a grain elevator downstairs that is separate from, and it's just downstairs. It's just kind of lying around. Go find it and bring it up, please. She's 14 and is giving me lots and lots of attitude. But the reason that I've asked her to go get that is it's an example of something that I did several years ago that I am not happy with. But I'm going to show it to you anyway, because we all have to start. We all have to start somewhere. Yeah, Matt Armstrong. Yeah, I can certainly understand that. Like one of the things when working with Unitrack is that the curves are 15 degrees, and like regardless of what the radius are, they're in 15-degree sections. So this was a test piece I did years ago before I got an airbrush, and that right there. Actually, let me just switch off to a bigger screen so you can see this. That right there is some Kato Unitrack, just with just done in a way that, frankly, I'm not all that happy with. But this was something that I did kind of as a mock-up, and I mean, I suppose it's workable, but the thing is, this was something that I learned a lot about, and the main thing is to just not give up with that. So, barn full of trains, welcome. So yeah, one of the things that I really want to do is to try and get as much of a realistic look to something like Kato Unitrack. But the whole goal of no matter what track you're using, whether it's microengineering, Pico, Atlas, whatever, is to get it as realistic as possible. And and sometimes like some would argue, and I think there's a decent argument for it, that if you want it really realistic, use code 55. But the truth is, my track work is not bulletproof. Willie will tell you that the with my own where are we here? Just coming back to this. And you see this first module that I made, that I created this complex track arrangement. I mean, it works, but I needed people who knew electrical much better than I did in order to make this actually work and to not add. I think for the most part we didn't have any trouble with derailments and the like, but it did actually it worked. I just I think there was a lot I could have done a lot better with it, but I certainly learned from it, and I think that's one thing that I think was quite helpful. So New Fenris, they do have more than 15, 30, 30 and 45. Oh, okay, that's good to know. I know that in the HO scale, they actually their arcs are a little bit different. Yeah, and okay, so Matt, what you're talking about is that the lack of easements with Kato Unitrack. I mean, they do have a double track kind of easement track that is an easement that once you get into it, but it's only designed for their super elevated track, and so that is something that we have to kind of keep in mind. You can kind of fake the look of an easement a little bit by putting the widest radius turn that they have and then tighten it up as you go around, but that's not a true easement. I mean, it's still there as well. Sparky, thank you very much. We have our first super chat. So that was louder on my end. So somewhere we've also got a train whistle. And
this sounds Similar enough.
Yeah, but anyway, thank you very much, Barky. So now, one of the things that when we were doing like part of the things when weathering track is make sure that you really do have to check your conductivity after you've been weathering it for a little while. And you see, one of the potential drawbacks is if I'm using a clear matte coat on this, unlike with paint, it's because it's clear, you're going to have to really work hard to make sure that the tops of the rails are clean. So, Matt, my daughter is. Oh boy. So, Matt, my daughter just pointed out the fact that you hooked up one of those wooden train whistles to a compressor. Did you blow it apart? That would have scared me. So Eastern, so JSCHL 954. So in Eastern Pennsylvania, the top rails are shiny, and so the side rails. Now, here's a question for those of you who live in more humid climates. Do the rails tend to be rusty? So if you're, say, Indiana, South, anywhere that gets like humid, humid warnings. Is the rail a little bit more rusty? And for those of you who live in more arid places like Arizona, and Eric and Joe, I'm looking at you. Is that where you're more the dark brown? Okay, 120 psi. That's more than I had a compressor in my garage that unfortunately thieves got into and stole the compressor. So I don't have a compressor anymore, but that was back last year. It wouldn't go up to 120. I think it sort of peaked out somewhere around 110. So I'm not sure if I just can't imagine it being that loud. I would have done a decibel test. Okay, so Joe, the rails in your area aren't really all that rusty. So, all right. And my daughter was just pointing out, is everybody still here? According to the information that I've here, is my viewership has just suddenly dropped to 0. But you're still, but everybody's still chatting as far as I can tell, or have we lost everything? So. 34 on your screen, 35 there. Okay, yeah, it just must be a glitch on my end. I just wanted to make sure that I'm still on the air. That's the main thing. Okay, good. All right. My daughter was suggesting a question, but a good one, but. Comments from the peanut gallery. So, okay, yeah, I suppose click likes, and we can now. I guess at this point, I think we can take up some QA, and I'm going to send my daughter up to deal with whatever Ian is currently doing at the moment. So, Megan, can you go take care of that, please? So, yeah, no, I have a 14-year-old here, and I've got a 5-year-old there. Normally, the 5-year-old is here, and the 14-year-old is beside me. But anyway, so I'm getting hit now. Maybe this is a question. Pardon me for a second. So, did I get a live chat, Megan?
Ah. Hello. Let's just wait for him to get back. So, hello. Yeah. He might be a while.
I'll be right down.
We'll see about that. So, hello. I have been the annoying voice in the background for most of the live streams, or if you've heard the odd trombone sound, although I don't have it right now, which is why I had to find this recorder. And I think he's upstairs handling my brother again. So he might be a little while. Oh, I think he's gonna come back. Just read everything from here.
Okay, quick, Megan, take over. Oh yeah. Well, thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I've tried duct tape before. It doesn't work on that one.
Anyway, all right. Can we trade places so I can get back there, or do you want to take over hosting duties?
Well, I mean, you can move the chair over here, or you can get a smaller one.
Oh yeah, zip ties would probably work. So yeah, I'm not sure if I can necessarily tape him to the wall. But yeah, so this is my daughter Megan.
Hello.
And so she's kind of taken over thing, and yeah, unfortunately it's like it's not quite 4 o'clock in the afternoon here, so. I couldn't get him to. There's no way that I could actually get him to bed at all. Now, what I wanted to do, so I'm gonna switch this out to a slightly different a slightly different frame. There we go. So you can. Now you're just kind of getting me from the forehead down.
Oh, you took one of those chairs.
The taller chair, but this is just more of a kind of an update. Yeah, I mean, certainly. There we go, family resemblance there. But this is the new controller system that I got, the Pico Smart Control. That's for those of you who weren't here earlier. It's Pico, and this is actually the same system as the ESU cab control. Have to say, I haven't had an upgrade for a DCC control system in 15 years, and wow, what a difference! This one, I have 4 locomotives that are equipped with ESU lock sound decoders, and this one, because it has to do with Railcom, I think, and you put it on the track and it automatically recognizes it right away. You don't even have to type it in. It's just bang, there it is, with all of the features that are there. Digitrack's decoders doesn't quite work as smoothly, but you plug in the number and away you go. But have to say, I'm going to be. Would you like me to do a review on that? That can be something that I can do. It's not normally kind of the stuff that I normally do on this channel, because normally it's doing weathering. But I'm yes, I'm getting a lot of sympathy here for people who have teenagers, whether whether male or female. So Joe, you're voting yes if you'd like to see me do a review on that, because I'm not gonna for my next loop to layout video. I actually have. I'm actually able to use this, and what I like about it is that I'm not tethered to something, because the previous system that I had was the original MRC Prodigy Express. So Willie, no, I did not use that controller yesterday. Don brought his. It looks identical to that. But no, I didn't get a chance to use that. But the nice thing is this controller can be used on any Wi-Fi based system as well as it is as its own.
Hi.
So
Hi.
of course. And now here comes Georgia. So we get cats in the picture as well. Sure, I will be happy to do a review on the controller. I'm doing it from a perspective of somebody who does not know DCC as well. You know, like I said, weathering's my thing, but all the other stuff I'm learning from you guys. And so that's one of the big things that I like about working with the model railroading community here online, is that I'm learning as much, if not more, from the various channels that are out there about this kind of process. And so, you know, particularly when I'm doing the loop to layout one, this isn't me going, I'm the expert. This is I'm learning this myself and trying to figure this out along the way. So. Joe, just as a quick, from what I understand, it works just as well as the ESU. The difference between the ESU cab control and this one is the internals are almost identical. The only difference is my understanding is that the ESU comes with a slightly bigger booster to it, so it's like 5 amps, and whereas this one is about 2.5. And for the size of layout that I'm doing, that's a fine size, and I don't need to buy the extra booster. But my understanding is it's a license thing. Internally, they're identical, and the only difference between them really is the actual label on the outside. There's some sort of deal between Pico and ESU. So I'm not as familiar with that. So hang on. Yes, the cat one. Used. Yes, you can send me photos. My suggestion to do so is go check out my Facebook page, and on the Facebook page there's a messenger option. Send the pictures through there. Or alternatively, on this YouTube channel, if you go to the contact and you can email them. You got to prove that you're not a bot, and then you can email me pictures there, and that would be absolutely fine. Yeah, I mean, I love to converse about this all things weathering. By the way, I do have another weathering video coming out for those of you who like graffiti, or even those of you who don't like graffiti. I had a commission a little not too long ago about doing a big, bright, huge graffiti piece on what is essentially a brand what in the real world looked like a brand new gondola that somebody just covered one side with one enormous piece, and that's apparently the terminology that graffiti writers use to describe something that's quite large. So I've posted some of the pictures of that to my Patreon page, but that's something that is coming up. I'm just in process of combining that. I'm also working on a switcher. I'm working on a steam locomotive, and I've got a pair of what appear to be I think are a couple of what are more modern road locomotives. I can't remember if they're ES44 ACs or as early as a -9. But that's another project that I'm going to be working on as well, and putting that cat underwater is not a good thing at all.
I speak from experience.
Yes, I actually N&W F150 is that how many of us actually do railroads like model railroads that are actually set in like terrible weather, like rain or the kind of brown, awful looking slushy stuff that you often get in the spring, or at least that's what we get around here. Is here in Calgary, we don't really get spring, we don't really get fall, we get summer and winter and fights. Is what we get around here as far as weather is concerned. So, and right now winter is firmly in control. For those of you who are just tuning in, it's currently minus 24 Celsius outside, and we are probably heading to a low of minus 40. And that minus 40 is one of those things where both Fahrenheit and Celsius, that's where they cross. So when I can say it's minus 40, I don't even have to tell you what system I'm using. So Joe, of course, it's nice and sunny there. Yeah. So.
So currently outside it is minus 24 degrees Celsius, but it feels like minus 37. And it's only gonna get worse.
Yeah, anyway, you don't have to tell them that.
You were the one who brought it up,
Dad. I know. We have our igloos up here, so we just call them houses. Yeah, and I know that some do spring, summer, but I don't know if I've seen anybody do something that is after rain, after or even during rain, with muck and the like. Because there are a lot of really neat effects that you can do that military modelers are starting to do more often. Is to actually not only do you have a weather tank, but you've got a weather tank that is half buried in mud. Especially if you're doing World War One, that kind of mud splatter, that you can actually basically you kind of take a fine plaster, mix weathering pigments into it, and then you take a brush full of it, and then use an airbrush to shoot through the brush and to splatter mud on your models. That's a little trick that can be that one can use as well. Anyway, we're kind of we're a little past the hour mark, and I'm actually due at my parents' place for supper. So I think I'm going to wind down from there. But it's good to be back on. Good to be on for a live chat. Thank you very much to Sparky for the super chat for today. And I hope to be able to do one of these a little bit. Right now, all of the computer setups that we have are upstairs, and the train is downstairs. So I may try and see what I can do to set up and maybe do a live stream from the layout room at one point. And yes, it is good to be live again. Even if it's just kind of coming in and chatting about stuff. But I will be giving updates. I've got I'll do a review on the I'm going to be doing a review on the smart control. I'll be the next video about from loop to layout actually has a little bit of operations. So Eric, this is one I know that you've signed off, Eric, but if you're watching this again, of course, when it comes to operations, Eric on IMRRO.com is really he's the guy to go to. So I'm going to be consulting with him, particularly once the next stage is to add just basically about 3 universal industries to the track. And then when I go beyond that of adding eventually a more complicated industry and a yard onto what I'm doing, I may be leaning on asking for a little bit of input on that, and then doing things about that as this layout evolves. So anyway, thank you very much for coming in. If you haven't already, hit the like button. And my next video I hope to have out within probably about 3 to 4 days. So just keep an eye out for that. And then the reviews and everything else will be coming along. And yeah, and as updates, we'll kind of go from there, and hopefully it will not be 6 months between now and my next live chat. So we'll go with this. Thank you so much for watching, and as the saying goes, good luck, and may you keep on track.